Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda Hunt. I'm the Director of Education and Public Programs here at MoCA. Thank you for joining us. We are thrilled to welcome Will Alexander to MoCA today on the occasion of Kerry James Marshall's Mastry. We'll be reading from a number of his books of poetry today. But first, a brief introduction. Known for his experimental surrealist prose, poet and Los Angeles native Will Alexander draws influence from the international avant-garde, from Aimé Césaire to André Breton, using the surrealist tradition of automatic writing to create new lexicons. He has written across genres including theater, novels, essays, and is even a visual artist in addition to all of that, and has taught at many colleges and universities, including the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics, the University of California, Los Angeles, and Hofstra University, among others. Born in LA, he remains a resident of our great city. Winner of the 2014 American Book Award and a Whiting Fellowship for Poetry, Alexander has also been awarded the 2016 Jackson Poetry Prize from Poets and Writers, in which they honored him as a, quote, truly singular voice. Please join me in welcoming Will Alexander.
Thank you, Amanda, for that introduction. And I want to thank all of you for appearing. And of course, I want to thank my good colleague, my great colleague, Kerry James Marshall, for this incredible exhibit. I want to say a few words and begin reading, but you have a situation here that's unprecedented. And why is it unprecedented? It's because we've had as Kerry points out, a 600-year hiatus in the modern world. Everything we've known has been European, Eurocentric. Kerry has broken that stretch of aridity that has to include the whole planet. In the last week, we have had a pullout of the Paris Accords, and at the same time, symbolically, the Larsen Sea ice shelf in Antarctica broke 11 miles in the last week of May, just this past few weeks. So this time period we're in is one of calving and breaking away and coming together. And we have to include rather than exclude, and Kerry's done an incredible example of that with these works. When we started talking years ago at the McManus Morgan Art Store, we were working as intensely as we are now. I'm doing writing and visuals, and he's doing his visual work. And there was a period of what we call apprenticeship. Apprenticeship is difficult because you don't know if you're going to make it through or not. You're just going on, I would say, blind faith on one level and intense faith in yourself and looking for that opening. And the opening is created through you through work. So I'm going to start the reading from an older volume, and the poem is called Apprenticeship. There is a quote from Octavio Paz: between impulses and repentances, between advances and retreats. It's from his book, Eagle or Sun. Here I am posing in a mirror of scratch paper sonnets, sonnets as rare as a live Aegean rhino, absorbing the cracklings of my craft, its riverine volcanoes, its spectacular lightning peninsulas, emitting plentiful creosote phantoms from an ironic blizzard of unsettled ploromas. Scouring through years of unrecognized pablums of constant arch rivalry with extinction, bringing up skulls of intensive discourse by the claws in one's mind which seem to burn with systemic reduction. One then suffers poetic scorching by debris, by inaugural timber which flashes, by friction which flares up and harries, by unrecognized moltens collapsing in glass of intuitive initial neglect. as if one's fangs were fatally stifled by incipience, by verbal range war didactics, by territorial driftwood, by sudden undemonstrative detractions, awed by the diverse infernos of Tracle and Dante. One's youngish body stands devoured by reverential print trails, momentarily canceled by the loss of blasphemous nerves and upheaval, stung by demeaning neutralities, ravaged by a blank Sumatran solar psychosis, by a tasteless collision of rums in transition, by a conspiracy of obscured fertility by hubris. As one sucks in doubt from a wave of tumbling blister trees, there exist irradiations flecked with a gamble senectity, with indeterminate earthenware splinters, taking up from aboriginal density a forge of Sumerian verbal signs, cooked with a tendency towards starfish hypnosis, towards psychic confrontational drainage, conducting one's frictions in a torrential furnace of osmosis and fire. Yes, apprenticeship means poetry scrawled in unremitting leper's mosaic, cringed in smoky interior cubicles, releasing various deliriums as if pointed under a blackened Oedipal star, with its dark, incapable tints, with its musical ruse of unspoken belladonna. Poetics, an imaginal flash of Russian chamber lilies, stretching under a blue marsupial sun, like kaleidoscopic tumbleweed, fugaciously transfixed upon an anomalous totem of glints, upon rainy Buenos Aires transfusions above the urinal coppers of a flaming polar star rise. Of course, kinetic, like magical malachite rivers flowing from moons blowing through the three-quarter summits of motionless anginas. I've looked for only the tonalities that scorch, which bring to my lips wave after wave of sensitivity by virulence. Yes, a merciless bitterness, brewed by a blue-black tornado of verbs, in a surge of flashing scorpion chatter, in a desiccated storm of inferential parallels and voltage, like a scattered igneous wind coterminous with the bleeding hiatus and resumption of breath, resolved by flashpoint edicts, by consumptive stellar limes, by curvature in tense proto-Bretonian fatigue, mixing magnets, juggling centripetal antipodes and infinities, cracking the smoke of pure rupestral magentas. Yes, hatcheries floating through acetylene corruption of practiced mental restraint, two splendiferous vistas mingled with inspirational roulette, its mysteriums always leaping like a grainy rash of scorching tarantellas or leaking moon-spun allostofas. As if speaking in irregular glaciological green Dutch, a frenetic seminar on verbicity, a reiteration of hendesyllabic agitation and stinging, a ferocious vacillation, explosive as random aggregational nodes, mimed by a black consonantal dissection, its maximal priority forked at hypotactic inclusion. With isochronous internal procedure, with ratios, with phonic penetralia by distortion, primed by anomalous nuclear accent, by a cadence composed of syllables and compounds. Yes, poetics, its force, jettisoned by hypotaxis, by paratactic coordination and fire. Now, when reading something like this, I don't expect everyone to get the vocabulary. Because poetry is an oral art. It's not a visual art. And the oral is your first understanding as a poet. And by the way, it's the last sense that goes before one is passing away. You can still hear at the end. So when a person is gone, you can still talk to them. So hearing is at the deepest core of the human experience. And it's our traditional, in the traditional cultures, hearing was always paramount, not seeing. In the West, it's always about what's seen, not what's heard. In other words, the technology of the inner world has been overshadowed by the technology of the outer world. And so that's why we have a paucity of human resources on this planet now. People are taken away from their original languages, their original feelings, their original ways of handling the universe and God. So we have to go back to our people in Tasmania who have been wiped out, but to those feelings that restored their energy in the 1820s when they were living. And of course, the old Egyptian cultures, too many to name. But I want to go a little bit forward. I wrote a poem many years ago about the art of painting, because I'm a visual artist as well. And I'm going to read a few pages of this. This is a 47-page poem, so I don't expect you to stay with me on that. So I'm going to do a few pages here, and we'll work from there into the next adventure. And this is entitled "The Stratospheric Canticles." And I have a quote here from the great Spanish poet Rafael Alberti. He was also a verbal practitioner and a visual practitioner. And Alberti says, "Not sun, not moon, not stars, not the sudden green of lightning, not the air, only mist." To paint is to make a mark of mirrors, of genuine graphite slabs poisoned with mescal and olives, in each of their scorching medial colors evincing the glow of purple turpentine sierras, shadowed with a shaft of blue tubercular lightning, so that stones fly up like falcons bursting in asteroidal twilight. An aerial canvas marked by transparent ocular ravines with its intense color, its agitated lines, its pessimistic convictions mined from smoking quinine soils. A gulf of fiery alpine cinders like calligraphic scarlets rising from smoky virginal hells, colliding with altimeter chartreuse as an enriched traumatic grammar of squalls, a grammar as in Mata with his occulted balance of streaks, his fleeting micrometer aloes, his rays of precise acoustical jade, his juggled intensities by inward explosion of fraction. By a trance of ungovernable burnings, as in a beautiful wind-blown draught. Sacrifice of still life by argumentative still life, so that there is motion, the retroflexion of orange and radical selenium fevers into razored Prussian green glints, as in a ravenous wall of ivy bursting with flameless medicinal dawns. A cataract of palaces atop the raging light of appositional isotopes, sending out a cherished collusional ray across a series of transaxial nerve fields. A flight of levitational acidics, fiery illusional rains upon transfixed ruins of spectrographic novae, as in subconscious germinal neutralities, as in linguistic anopsia, equiponderate with blinding chromosomal orchids formed in a precious breach of flotational cadmium. There exist rays, seen from the glass of glowing lava and brambles, existing as an image of working illuminate dragons, or the desiccated face of a crimson Assyrian singing demon, shining through a luminous biochemical cosmogony, with the gift of miraculous terror, with exotic Byzantine plumage gleaming by formula by the secret flow of metamorphosis, like crackling inductors spewing cosmogonic turquoise statuesque osmium, whipping Saturnian electrodes, winds yellowed, active, blowing by iconic motive, by doves and momentary glycerin fish circling a fissure of glass of miles and miles of vertical X-ray helium, like reddish invisible eruptions, fugacious as with blue absorption lines, with their flares of autumnal deluge, with their carmine sigils, with their stormy climacteric phantoms, taking on the murky force of bipedal lagoons, within a shifting circumstance of cerulean, within the uplifted cholera, mixed with rotations of a heavenly halcyon sun, emitting its fires into atmospheric volume, into blank reverential mutilation, so that the violet, the ochre, the chromium, the green, into fulminant Chinese sienna, which is correlation by goddess, by blood creeping from the sorcerous heat of ambiguous shellfish enclaves, encircling the rows of prolific cortical timbers. Paint, able to conjure cyanine green fields, flotational cobalt moons, hallucinated umber like a Corcellius evolved from dying charcoal fish, resurrected by leopards, swimming the rims of judgmental Armageddons, divining the leaping fires from a raging blood snapper furnace. Its fabulous fumaroles of anguish, its fugitive uncharted scarlets like a cunning seminal beast, a palpable beast, ensnared in winding arcs from a central core. One of the things I like to do with language, it's back to the traditional cultures, is bring the mantra into the sound. You know, the modern world is tumultuous with fragmentation, never with wholeness. This part is divided from that part. This part is divided from that part. And people walk around in this chaotic schizophrenia. And it reflects in the way that the body works. The mind and the body are non-connected. We have heard a lot of vocabulary about that, but to put that into practice, especially now, with the fractious nature of the planet as we have it from all dimensions. So I'm glad Kerry is doing this to bring, we've lost 600 years, and I go back to the Islamic Renaissance, when all of the modern world was discovered and has been hidden by the West. From eyeglasses, street lighting, you know, all the book arts, shipping, mechanical devices, you name it. The Banu Musa brothers with their great size, it's been hidden. And all the credit, the sun system was actually discovered through the Islamic culture. But then it was swooped up in this Western Renaissance and given, miscredited and given to Copernicus, and it's all in print. I'm not denying the greatness of the European Renaissance, but it was only a partial Renaissance because the visual arts were rampant, but they were only for the upper classes. But the energy in the Islamic Renaissance was seemingly for all the people. We go back to the information in Granada with Jose Pimienta Bay. You might not know the name, but he's written some incredible stuff on this. And the educational system of Harvard and Yale and Princeton was all based on the Islamic model. And, you know, I want to go back to the ancient sources more than the modern sources, and I'm going to read a poem about really ancient sources that are pre-human. So we want to go back beyond that. And I'm going to take an image of a blood penguin. And when there was more oxygen on the planet, things grew much larger. So we see these cute little penguins today. At some point in time, they were that tall. And this is a voice of the blood penguin speaking. I like to go into different modes and stratifications of consciousness where, you know, I can channel in animals and different forms of nature. And this is one of the channelings I've done. It's called the blood penguin, and we'll proceed. He says, I am the carnivore, the hounded night walker, searching for my wings scattered under glass. They claim I should return to monomial transfixing, to exhibit A and no further. To some, I am 6 foot and lizard. To others, I am considered a mange lamb, returned from the tropics. I am never given due as to sum or proportion. I am seen as a source of something leprous, as no longer the motive of who I was thought I was shaped to be. I, who live as mislaid damage, as part of pointless verbal ejecta. There are no nouns to ensnare me, to fish up my blood so as to summon consensus. I am never that condition within the fire of conjoinment. I am never to be the human boy genius, the archivist, the bartered child contending with study. I am none of the above, none of the aforesaid compendiums. I am the animist, the vertical lion tundra, the diamond bird who burrows under snow. Because of my leaning, I know the stark Egyptian soma, much as would a blinded cemetery scribe. And because I understand one's basic neural unravelment, I am seen as piacular, as specter, as both standing and freezing, being of some other form from some other planet. As clinical morae addendum, this contains in itself blackened scrawl marks from Moravia, from squandered Quanda, from the Sunda Islands, from quaking fogs from Santiago. They say I suffer from powerful deafening by resistance, my eyes wild and ferocious with lapses, the attention spun and blunted, the asteroidal paralysis shifted. So they say the unknown is the trigonomic, is the transcendent nucleus, the born equational spell, according to the flaws in universal summoning. I am ancient pantomime who cannot grasp, who cannot transgress his inherited Landino. As to Mayan graphs and squares, I am plummeted. I am simply without the means to conduct my own prism, to take on the culpable mean at circumstantial limit. I exist through negated practical limit, through parallel sub-causes, without knowing the desire to suck the enzymes from living. I am without and without and without. I who create doubt in the genetics of perpetual conflict. I could be as strange as a human half-rot who poses himself as Hilario Pozuelos, and what is claimed against me is not unreasoned, is not the treatise of post-fanatics. Instead, it is a curious treatise on circumstantial exhibit. It says my values are possessed by distance, like someone humbled or plagued by a treaty. My dispossessed senses described by these methods under the forms of the treasonous. It tells me I am lifeless blood equipment, that my genes are not useful, that my mind is simply stricken or exposed. Yet such a chronicle loses spores in the glaciers. It says I'm of Africa and the seacoast, of Ghana and the Seychelles, of insular breakage near the Azores. Not even a dwelling beneath the stars as the etheric camp base on Saturn. Such is the ether climb. The sub-revelation is dialectical cartography, conjoining with the ocelots swimming across the prisms of Mauritius, or simple flatland in Manchuria. These are seen as soils no known warrior can claim. Because I readily announce my resistance, my tone is carnivorous psychic sparring, wandering beyond pervasive death concussives, claimed by genetic dyslogistics, by anarchic ruin, by Jurassic subling cirrhosis. I cannot describe by cursory enclosure, external motivation, or any rotary or back-flowing water attainment. It is described as simulacra, as ghost data, as hibernation through pillage, non-specific, post-necrotic, partaking in part as jonquil and longevity. Of course, the cells blaze, infinity evolves, the monsoons project through containment. Yet nothing resolves, nothing forbears, and is clement. I exist as steep electrical ice, asking of myself spells of pointless dominating fuels. Within this agnostic current, I describe myself as one who's hellish, who's buried his weight with a double insistence, who seems to sleep in a brazen cylinder of peril. Then, after a pause in listening, calling myself the blood penguin, embraced by squalls, by an oily and misshapen blinding. To get to a point in poetic practice, it's an internal practice that immediate concentration, intense concentration on the inside. So when I write a longer poem, I have as much concentration as when I do a very short poem. And I have some very short poems I wanted to take into context here. One is called The Newborn. It's a few lines. The newborn as combat, as plesiosaur and yield, as listless momentary monster. There's one called the pointless nether plow. It is farming in an inclement sun system like a powerless nether beast fallen amidst random stellar debris. Fruit changes form. Light then quavers across distorted mural relics. The farmer then living as a clarified adder, his landforms compressed, his wheat suspended and flaring, his unstable forms carving his soil with volcanic blue seeds. What I'm concerned for is that we're living in a large universe. We're not living in a small universe. And we've been this closed down where we see only European images for 600 years, and now we're going into the heavens. How does this prepare us on earth to go into the heavens if we only see one type of image of humanity or one type of image of life on this planet? So we have to go into the traditional societies of seeing everything, the traditional ideas of indigenous societies of seeing everything alive. And we just can't go out and shoot buffalo from a train wreck. I call it a train wreck because it was a wreck when you just murder just for sport. And unfortunately, people are being killed today. And the tragedy in London was amazing. But the bomb blew up in Kabul a few days earlier, and they just said 80 people killed. 80 people, just things. This is a problem. This is a serious problem where people from Afghanistan and Sri Lanka and wherever brown and dark people are existing, they are numbers, not people. They're never listed. And so it's a psychological distortion that's been going on far too long. And you can't deal with it through legislation. You have to deal with the inside of the inside. And I want to read a poem concerning this distortion. It's called The Pulpit Avignon. And one thing about this poem, it came to me unbidden. At a certain point, what you do as a poet, you cultivate yourself through all of it's like what Rimbaud talked about is internal alchemy, which may not make sense on the outside. Why are you doing this? Why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing this? Because you're dealing with some deeper ores, which we've lost contact with. We've lost contact with everything on the inside. So my idea is to work through internal technology rather than external technology. Sometimes as a writer, you don't have anything to show, but your reward sometimes for that is getting this poem full blast. And I got this in the office one day. I don't remember what I was doing, but the poem overtook everything I was doing that day. And it's the voice of the pulpit, Avignon. He says, I remain the pulpit Avignon because nothing in this world can conceal me. I test the limits of my evil, prone as I am to bloody offspring by debacle. I, being the leathery witness of evil, I, being the culture of the offspring of evil, I, who ferry toxins on the Sabbath, I, who blossom by means of spillage and errata, seek in his conclusives to amalgamate hypocrisy, to ascribe to force a plain and turbulent bleeding, assured that my own hosannas resound, that the force of my name alters cataracts in hell. Because I can in no ways do otherwise, perhaps pontificate, announce bread, breathe the scars on my flanks as signs from the above. Raising as I do certain virgins up from hell, extracting a carnal medicine from the eyelids, I left Rome to inculcate the Bosphorus. Thus, I remain strategic in that my eyes are flawed, that my hands are tragically spent. This, the charismatic occurrence of I who seem to dwell within the pastures of deeper sweltering. I, being the sorcerer who shreds gowns, who creates justice in life by supreme and opulent verdict, by miasma which lingers and verifies confusion, by the dark forms of sand, by the diamonds which erupt arrows, that would lead one to believe that I am clinging to ruination, for inconsolable payment, for making land conform to the object of rent wheat. Thus I am posterior to different forms which inhale the sun. Thus, I am recondite by instability, having fathered 2 magnetic serpents in my struggle with containment. Of course, I am divided, miasmatic and melancholic. Thus, I grant myself the folly, the ambrosia, the scales that weigh cunning in my mitre. Thus, I trespass heaven and ascend through stars, through nucleic transposition. Thus, the bishops advance my meddlesome fornication, one by one advancing my secrets, absorbing a tacit henbane in the skin, and one by one they'll fail, as if a medley of serpents conspired against their treason. And when they die, I'll give them over to God. I'll say that they possessed a cleansed rooting and an ochre foil in their hearts. I'll say that their secret assignations were justified by limit, by double fathering in the genes, so that their offspring will conspire to teach me consummation, to take in the soils from amniotic shelters with codes which reveal the lower constituency of boasting. I am miracle in this regard. I control by lamentation, by fragments and disbelief, by feral conundrum as status. Thus, I cohabit on sheets of coal, because each contaminant strengthens, as if I pulled a fetid sheaf from lagoons and traded various boats of opal along with a cardinal of reddish manganese. And so, amidst the routes of the Bosphorus, they admit my own accursedness, yet they shield me, they offer intrigue, they offer foregone specifics, so as to shelter my mission, knowing that they know that gold condenses as evil, that Jesus Christ limits and is sorcerous and askew. They know comedic investigation. They know the stolen urns, the non-recorded labor. They know that the one true God has never amended his thinking, a struggle with his own catharsis, understanding that I've slept with the offspring of eels, I've hidden a lamb in my garments, having struggled with beasts and all the four-legged raptors. Thus, I've come to my decision to slaughter as opposed to retainment, always concocting in my brain the structure and physiology of monsters. And these guys were monsters. These popes, not good. Not good. They remain not, and they've left us completely occluded in the cosmos. You know, in fact, this was no Renaissance, folks. When the revolution that was supposed to bring in enlightenment was the infusion of the Renaissance was the energy of the problematics with the suppression of women and of slavery and Indian slaughter. This is what Kerry is trying to address here, trying to create, and with this great exhibit, a small corrective in the narrative. And I'll just read a couple more poems. You know, poetry is difficult to listen to. So I'll read a few more, smaller ones. From, in fact, from my book, The Sri Lankan Loxodrome. And these are available. You can get these from City Lights, and this is from New Directions. The Compression Impurity and the Sri Lankan Loxodrome from New Directions. And I have a couple more books here. I'll dip down and bring one out. And these are for sale today, a couple of these. This is my newest book. It's Meditation on Artaud and Aimé Césaire and Roger Gilbert Lecomte. And these are, you can see me if you want one of these. But I'll finish with a couple from the Loxodrome. And this is entitled A Nexus of Phantoms. In a lorikeet cave, motions exist of disintegrated swans, brimming with harvested poisons sealed by corruptive postmortems. Such swans, staggered by microbial reasoning, their aggressive nest anatomical with anomaly, with drifts of strenuous incarnadine leanings, with a thirst which hurdles conspiratorial invasives, alive with coronal oceanics, open like a clouded trail of rendings. Analogous with the auks, the pelicans, the mergansers, perhaps with the petrels and the gannets under the power of darted mocking orations. The swans looking back on solemn blood perusal like a form of death breaking roses on a shore. It is the example of phonograms, of lost and compacted lenses turning within a charismatic fall line, or an isogneth, or what an avian would announce in Greenland as a catabolic wind. The swans, like a haze of magnetism or implied gondola locations, where the scent of each lorikeet is consumed and brought to dazzling eclipse refulgence. In another foci, in another depth, their form self-challenged in a cloak of suns, their power de-revealed with 7 moons burning, reduced to 2 intense incendiary magnets. And these incendiary magnets lack a nexus of phantoms scattered across a geometric optometry. And one more to finish. Water as a dysphoric medium. It's a difficult situation on this planet with water because refugees travel across this, it's another planet. Water is another planet, and it swirls, and when you get into water, it's a whole nother world. And so to examine the imago ignota, what is known in Latin is the other, to go into the other. And so my poetry has been about announcing and going into the other via language. And this is called water as a dysphoric medium. Dysphoric is unbalanced. A skittish form in sudden arsenic waters, amplified like a smoky siphonophore within a black gestation of strata. The water then burns beneath an androgynous source of lilies, with each of its moons exploded like garish millipedes in resin. Thought becomes an isotope within hydrology, within an inorganic compound, within the power of its youngest sea, where I imagine in its depths the force of stunning manganese trees, or a body of crows trapped within a heated polar ceiling. The depths reversed with their isobars, with their dust counts, like land condemned to brutish wheat projection. The biopsies, the oxygen meters, the taste of stunned plankton like a concentrated polyp from a tribe of spontaneous stellar confinement. The anatomical, the blank globigerina of debris like darting alchemical thievery, or a dazed selenium hull, or vaporized boreum falling miles and miles to the bottom, flecked at a level beyond carbonized petroleum, beyond that which antedates salt. I'm speaking of energies which ingest the first perfected forms of creation, the primordium of waves, the calligraphy of torment. And so the coelacanths, the vampire fish, the orbits of volcanoes endure. In the thing and the timing of the amplitudes, the surges, the gusts, like thermal craters which explode and collapse and reabsorb themselves as a fulminant microalgae, as a violet insomnial structure devoid of blood, of instance, of birth. The writhing dunes, the dark conduction of saliva, de-energized by merging, then brought to bear upon fruit of infertilized deltas. I thank you.